Welcome to another Build It Live trailer. Looking forward to having another special guest with me today. I have David Weeks, Enable Senior Director of Partner Experience. David, how are you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing awesome, man. I'm looking forward to this. I think it's going to be a great chat today. And it's, I think, a pretty exciting topic that we've got here.
I'm excited about it too. You know, one of the things that David he was telling me earlier, as you guys we're waiting for people to join in here. You're coming to us from Ottawa today, right?
I am up in Canada, home after a long 3-week trip, actually over the pond across Europe and Africa. We were out seeing our partners. It was an exciting time, some great events, some great shows, and got to learn a lot actually, as we always do from MSPs around the world, understanding what's happening in the market, what's going on, and really what it is they're looking for to grow their business. So it was great to be back on the heels of that.
Well, we're excited. Hopefully, you can share with us some of what you heard out there. And I know that today's topic is a really great one. We're talking about owning the cloud, right? And that's, I think, for so many MSPs that are out there, as we think about what's next, I really am I'm excited for this topic today because I think we're going to cover some good ground here. But one of the cool things is before we get started, Dave, obviously, I'm excited to have you here. The topic is going to be amazing. We always like to start off our webinars with a trivia question. And the reason we do this is because there'll be two lucky winners today that are going to win some tickets to Build It Live 2022, July 27th to 29th. We're really excited. And we want to say thank you because you've donated a trivia question today. And Dave, what's our trivia question for the day?
Well, and I'll be fair on this because it's what is the national sport of Canada, but it is a trick question. So I'm just going to say that I'm not going to give any more hints at this point, but it's a little bit of a trick question.
All right. So there'll be two lucky winners that come away today with some tickets for those that answer the question first. Obviously, there's a trick there. So we know that Dave's a trickster here, and we got a good question for our audience and those that are engaging with us. Uh, so for those of you that want to play the game, jump into the chat, post the comments. Definitely get in on this. It's going to be super fun. So before we announce, we go or jump in and announce some of the stuff that we're doing today, I want to say thank you to Enable for participating in this webinar. You guys are an amazing company. We're really appreciative of you guys coming to Build It Live 2022 and really giving back to the community. And one of the things that you've done is also give back today with a discount code for those that want to participate and Build It Live. Obviously, if you're not one of the two people that win today, we definitely want you to be there. And the way you can get there is with the discount code Own the Cloud. And that is a thank you to Enable for that discount code for you. For those of you who want to register for the event, go to our website, Build It Live, and definitely get in there, put in the discount code, and we will have you join us with that discount code. So Build It Live, buildit-live.net. You would think, Dave, that I say that so much that I get that right every time.
I know exactly what you mean. I have trouble sometimes just getting enable.com right. So you're all good.
Yeah. So let's talk about this. One of the big things for us, obviously, is, as we think about where the future is going in managed services, and we're thinking about, new ways to go to market and things that we can be bringing value and create new additional lines of revenue. Obviously, the cloud is there, right? We definitely know that that's the future. The modern buyer, the way they want to interact, it gives us a ton of flexibility. But obviously coming out of the situation that we were just in the pandemic, and I don't know that we'll ever fully be out of it, but there was a lot of things that took place, and that remote worker really flourished, right? And managed services, we scrambled to just try to get to market and try to figure out meaningful ways to get people to be productive in these remote spaces, whether they be at home or they be at a co-working space or whatever it was. What do you think? I mean, obviously the adoption was drastic, and during the time during COVID, but what are your thoughts around that, Dave?
Yeah, you know what? It was a really interesting time, and in talking to service providers around the world, for in some cases years, they were telling their customers it's time to make the move to the cloud.
Yeah.
And there's a change in the way that you can do business. It brings scalability, efficiency, and we all know some of the value props around it. But then we had this turning point almost instantly overnight. And when we moved workers home, a lot of that on-prem infrastructure left them massively vulnerable or without the ability to even connect and work from home. So we saw this big adoption of cloud that came in place, and service providers were unreal around the world. Basically, we moved a global workforce to home within a few days, which was pretty crazy whenever you think about it. But the cloud was instrumental in that. And there was, the need for MSPs to quickly start to advance. How are these workers going to connect and still be productive and generating revenue for the organization? And so this new opportunity arose. And what we saw a lot at the beginning of the pandemic, which was actually really interesting, was a lot of service providers picked up a ton of project work where, decision makers and business owners said, I should have done this a while ago. I get it. Now let's make that investment, because I need my staff working. And then from that, it came into, okay, well, what do we do moving forward? And how do we really make this work for our business as we start to come back? So, we're still in this storyline, I would say, in terms of how this is all really moving forward. And it's an interesting time, but there's a ton of opportunity there for service providers today.
Yeah, and I think that, obviously you mentioned something that I caught on to there. As we move forward and as we had to do these things, a lot of the things that we found challenging for a lot of companies was there wasn't a lot of business coming in. There wasn't a lot of money coming in during that time. So we had to help. And I said that during the pandemic, the best thing that we can do right now is stop and help. And I think that we saw a lot of other MSPs do just that and help their customers. And I think that it shifted us from, and I talked about this years ago, where X as a service was a thing. And I think that moving away from that capex to that OpEx model was a huge opportunity for people. And we recognize that, look, hey, they can't afford really heavy capital outlays during this time. We need to be able to find easy to consume opportunities. So, what is your thoughts around the, obviously the aspects of the OpEx component and the, that whole piece around how we enable our partners through that pricing model?
Yeah, you know what? It's a really good question. There's when you look at a capex versus an OpEx model, it changes a lot in terms of the accounting side and the financials of an organization. A capex, you have to think about an amortization period and you have to think about a depreciation period. And all of those add complexity into a business owner really understanding, hey, what is it that I'm investing in? When do I get my return? When do I have to have a replacement? And that makes it a much more complex sales cycle in many cases. When we talk OpEx, things have changed dramatically because it just keeps going. And that model of SaaS is easy to consume. It brings that that scalability component, and it brings a lot of efficiency as well too. And connectivity is critical to everybody today. I mean, as I mentioned earlier, when we were talking, I was just traveling the world. I've got 3 or 4 devices that I rely on when I'm on the road to connect, whether that's on an airplane, in an airport, a hotel, in an event, whatever it might be. But without the cloud, it's much different, right? And with the cloud, your accessibility is much improved. And so that OpEx model is not only easier to consume, but when you look at budgeting and budgetary forecasts, it's easier for a business owner to understand that and see it in a linear line to be able to say, okay, I understand this is ongoing. Unless I expand or contract or add new services, I don't see a lot. Right. So we do, we can talk about SaaS sprawl and all of that. We understand those are issues. But if we were to take a single line item of SaaS and in an OpEx model, a business owner understands that. They can see the future and they understand how to implement that into their business.
Yeah, and I think that it's interesting that we say that. Obviously it sounds like it rolls off of the tongue, and that it would just be, we say it from this side of the fence, like it should be, just easy to consume. It's interesting is transitioning those customers from the capex table to the OpEx table, right? And I think that's where the value chain is in the managed services provider opportunity is showing them the cost of doing business, right? I used to always have that conversation with my customers at the table, and they're like, well, can't I just pay for the technology and then I don't have that expense anymore? And I'm like, that's not how that works anymore. Yeah, right? Like it's business-based consumption right now, and it's cost-based and it's value add, right? So the world of us just paying for a server and then the cost goes away doesn't, that's not how that works anymore. So it's an actual, there's a cost per employee model here, and here are the cost of all of the services and products that you have in order to be able to do that. So I really like what you're saying there. And obviously, with that, you mentioned a couple of things a couple times here, and I think that, focusing on the new remote worker, right? And really, and giving them the opportunity to embrace new talent, right? Obviously, the hiring challenges that are out there right now. One of the things too about the cloud, I think, and you mentioned this a couple times now, is it's driving productivity, right? And so, what are some of the things that you see from a talk track perspective with your partners that you're hearing from a
Yeah, you know what? It's a good question, one, and it's when you think about the cloud, to take a step back, a lot of people in previous years would say, "Well, my customers don't want to move to the cloud."
right,
Well, first off, why do they care? Right? Because what they're trying to do is just achieve an end goal is I need to connect and I need to be able to do what I need to do to get my job done and generate my revenue per hour as an
right,
employee.
right,
Right. And that's really what it is. So, I mean, a lot of times what I see when I talk to service providers is they inject and pre-object for their customers before they've even objected.
right,
And they're almost scaring themselves out of the sale in a way. But those who have been really successful at it, what they have the ability to do is be able to walk in and say, look at what you're doing today. Your productivity is at X level. If I'm able to implement some new services, a new way of connecting, give you more capability to connect outside of the office at any time, from any point, from anywhere in the world, from any device, hey, I can increase that productivity per employee for a small investment. An increase in productivity per employee actually means an increase in revenue per employee per hour. And so you're actually creating your own return on investment to actually justify your services and the move that they would make. So there is an increase with the cloud in productivity. I mean, I'm on right now a laptop talking to you, but I can do everything from this. No
correct.
problem. And that is another area of efficiency that the cloud allowed for. I'm not tethered to something. I don't have to be plugged into something. And so thinking about those areas, a big area that we talk about is number one cost in a business is human capital, it's payroll, but
Yeah,
number two is IT. So
right.
when you're actually positioning changes in IT services, you're actually talking about a human resource cost. And so that's your value proposition as you're talking about this. And the cloud offers these umpteen opportunities to be able to say, if I can make these changes, increase efficiency and productivity, you're actually going to be better off as a business making more money for that small investment. And so those are the talk tracks that we talk about with different MSPs around the world.
I love what you're saying because I actually just literally wrote that. Me and you, I don't know if we both went and ate the same exact food at the exact same time, but like what you just said was literally a reincantation of what I said 3 days ago and almost verbatim. And it was interesting the way you said it though, but I'll add something to it because one of the things is generating the intangible, right? So in like, let's say you're having that conversation with that customer, maybe you're in a QBR and you're trying to generate value and really delivering on an outcome that you said your product or service could deliver is taking that fully burdened rate, calculating the total productivity that it created within that customer environment, and then actually delivering back quantifiable return on investment. So I love where you're going with it because you and I literally hit the same nail on the same head, and I was like, man, either we've ate the same thing or something's gone wrong here because that was like perfect. I loved
Yeah.
it. I loved the way you said it too because I was like, okay, maybe I found not
Well,
often do you find someone that says it just the same way, and I was like, "Whoa."
yeah, you know what? And it's true. And I think one of the biggest mistakes we make is trying to sell the cloud as a technology versus trying to
Right.
sell the cloud as a service.
Mhm.
And when you're selling it as a technology, listen, I'm a business guy. I get some technology. I understand to a certain level. But if you're explaining to me packet losses and throughput, I'm
Yeah.
lost, and I'm not really sure what I'm paying for. So it's about the service. And like you said, the intangible is a key point. But it's what every person's looking for, every decision maker, every business owner is what's the end result that I'm getting from the change that you're making. And when
Yep.
we focus on the end result, that's where your real value proposition sits.
I love it. I talk about selling outcomes all the time. I even backed into I remember when I first started talking about customer experience as a service. It's like the move past managed services into it, and it's just really great to see that other people are really starting to adopt that and that your partners are starting to think that way and that we're really starting to evolve because that's what moves businesses forward, and that's where I think, we need to get most of us need to get on board. And I want to get your thoughts here, as far as pushing customers to make a different decision, not a cost-based decision, but a business value-based decision. And I think a lot of that comes from, really having conversations around what you're doing today, whether you have hardware or you have something on-prem, what is the outcome that your business is trying to accomplish? What are the things that you can accomplish, the productivity gains, the return on investments that you can handle and acquire by moving to a SaaS-based model and creating that unique opportunity within those organizations to create that value chain, right? So what are your thoughts? I mean, obviously you're having a lot of conversations with a lot of MSPs, with them moving. It's interesting to hear that we're still talking about on-prem hardware, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, it's kind of like with it's like almost within the last 24 months, that like almost disappeared, but it's still there. What are your thoughts around that? And what do we need to be doing to get them past that and instill that value?
Yeah, you know what? It was interesting. I just had this conversation actually in South Africa with a partner, and one of the comments he said to me was, he said, "I've only moved 20% of my base to the cloud," and I said,
Wow.
"Why is that?" And it was the usual comment we hear is, "Well, they don't want to move." And
Yeah.
I said, "Well, what is the risk to your business with on-prem?" And he said, "Well, it's older hardware. They don't want to make the investment and so forth." And I said, "Okay, so what is your acceptable level of risk?"
Oh,
And that
yeah.
was a big question that, he said, he goes, "Well, I don't want to take any risk." And I said, no, really think about that question, right? Everybody has an acceptable level of risk. I said, but
Yeah.
you need to go ask your customer what's their acceptable level of risk, because the more you're going to take on as a service provider, the more you're going to charge them. Right. And the less that you can deprecate that with services and different changes, the more you can play with that number for them on a monthly basis. And I said, there's a point in time as well, too, where as a business, you have to make the decision to say, this is our minimum viable program. I mean, I
Right.
don't know a service provider today that would still be trying to find an old Exchange server to install on-prem for a customer, right? It's, hey, you're going on M365. So as hardware comes to end of life, why are we not saying your only option is X, right?
Yeah.
Why are we still giving the option of Y? So to me, that comes down to what we call the minimum viable program, that you have a baseline standard as a service provider. Your customers have to adhere to that. And if you're taking on undue risk or cost, is the contract actually really worth it? I mean, you
Yeah.
can have 150 or 150,000 kind of profitable customers,
Right.
right? Or you can have 80 extremely profitable customers. And we have to think about that when we're deciding how we're going to position our services to our customers and to prospects. And listen,
Yeah.
you're the expert as an MSP. So, a business owner shouldn't be saying, this is what I want, if they don't really know what it is that they're asking for.
Yeah, I really like where you're going with that. I said that often, even when I had my own MSP. They'd always ask for negotiation and price, and I would never change my price ever. Like, this is the cost of doing business. For me to do it cheaper is only going to provide a worse outcome for you. So I'm not going to subject everyone else. And if I'm not the right service provider for you, then I'm not the right service provider. There's somebody who will always be cheaper. That's not the value. The conversation is about what is it that you're getting for the cost that I'm giving, right? And so, to your point, I think as you move away from those conversations, and I talk about this all the time, limits and liabilities, for those MSPs that are out there that are with us today, check your contracts, because if you're not spelling out your limits and liabilities, you are absorbing a lot of those liabilities, and with no limit. To your point, it's just, in a court of law, and I say this all the time, the worst place you ever find yourself is being deposed on the other side because you didn't realize that you needed to be doing all these things and you didn't, right? So I love where you're going with that. To your point, I think you're right. And we had the similar thing, right? Manufacturer supported hardware, and if it's not, we don't support it,
Yeah.
period. Right. And so that's a really good negotiation tool to force the hand to make a decision of, okay, yeah, I know I spent money on that. And we get it all the time. Can I make that server? It's just working fine. Can't we just leave it alone and wait till it dies? And it's like, I love what you said, because it's like, is that your level of risk? Like, you're okay with your business just stopping one day at a random, like, maybe on a busy day.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
like,
It's always at the worst time, right? You know
yeah,
what? I say it to service providers all the time. Well, you know what? They don't think the server will ever die. And I just say, well, then go in the room and unplug it.
yeah,
I mean, they'll realize the pain right away. I mean, you can even take anybody's laptop and walk away with it. How are they going to do their job? That's the exact same as downtime.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, that gets us into that next piece, with those complexities and those opportunities being available, right, at any turn of a corner, it's our job as service providers to really have those conversations. And I think that you kind of there's a couple different ways you can educate the customer, right? And I think that one of the things is having the conversation about RPO, RTO, recovery point objectives, recovery time objectives, and then, those cost-based benefits. I'm not talking about tech anymore. I'm talking about your business in selling uptime, right? I'm selling your business stability, right? And risk and security of those components and having those really executive conversations. That's what business owners really look for. And I'm curious, as you see that as a security and a risk, risk mitigation, how do you guys handle that? What are your thoughts around that, Dave?
Well, I mean, listen, the cloud brings complexity and the cloud brings risk. It does. But with risk and complexity brings opportunity as well, too. I kind of sound like I'm quoting from like a Spider-Man movie or something. I don't know why I just felt like that,
It
but
did sound with much responsibility, right?
yeah, I guess so. I don't know. I guess that's what was in my head. No, I mean, listen, there is complexity and there is risk with the cloud, but that just means an overlay of services, right? I mean, even if you were on-prem, you're still running an AV or an EDR. You're still running backup and data protection. I mean, none of that changes when you move somebody to the cloud. You're just doing it in a better way. And listen, cloud first isn't a bad way to look at things. The cloud can be convoluted. There can be a ton of options,
Right.
and it can make your head spin at times. But when you define how you want to deliver service and how you want to manage your customers, how you want to manage the risk, and how you want to manage that complexity, then you find the right services that fit in place. It's all there for you. And how in depth you want to go, it's all there as well, too. So, I mean, to me, when I look at it, it's, the cloud is something that's ever expanding.
Yeah.
And every time it expands, it brings more risk. As a service provider, your job is just to figure out how to plug that hole.
Yeah, I know, and I totally get it. I mean, as far as like security goes, that's one of the big things that we talk about in today's world. Access anywhere, anytime, any device. That increased our security surface a lot. So
Mhm.
talk me through your thoughts around the security components, around the enablement components. What are some of the talk tracks that you're hearing, or your service providers, or that maybe you guys are educating them on kind of crossing that chasm?
Yeah, for sure. When we talk security, so one thing I say, and I'm maybe a little bit more unique than some in the business, is I actually don't like the word security, because security can encompass personal security, physical security, property security. I mean, it can get it's somewhat of a generic term. I think about risk mitigation, but what we talk about is start with the user and work your way out. Because you always have your riskier users, those who just click on everything, but you also have those who have access to very critical data that
Yep.
the bad guys want. So we start there, and what many would call the crown jewels, et cetera, the most important data in the company. Find the users with access and work backwards. What do I do to protect the endpoint? Now, how do I put a layer in front of that user in the endpoint? Now, hey, how do I put a layer at the internet? Now, hey, how do I stop it as it's, before it's even coming through my firewall, et cetera? So this layered security approach that we talk about, the way, we explain it, we talk with partners, is the hackers and those who are trying to breach your systems aren't going to give up unless the data is not valuable. If the
Right.
data is valuable, they'll continue to try. So each one of those layers is a wall. They may get past wall number 1, then they hit wall 2. Wall 2, they get past that, they hit wall 3. Eventually they do get tired and they will give up and move on, because it's a business for them. It's not profitable to continue trying to get to something that they don't feel that they're going to be able to access. So that's the way we talk about it, is start with a user-based assessment and work your way out and figure out the amount of layers that you need by user. And that typically is pretty standard across the whole company, because they're all interconnected anyways. But when you use your riskiest users, or those with access to the most valuable data, and inception points that could happen in the business, it's easier to sell the rounded picture of getting everybody on board with everything.
I like that idea, and it's really, it's protecting, like you said, the crown jewels. One of the big things is, and I will say this, obviously back in my previous life as an engineer, as certified ethical hacker, one of the things was you recognize that they would stop at certain places. Hackers would stop at a certain place when they saw a level of technology enablement or security control or policy that they knew they weren't going to get past, right? There was like this clear wall when they knew what was in place, because they know it's not like they don't know the technologies that are out there, and they know where they can win and they know where they're not going to win. And that layered approach, what you're saying, is essential for just the opportunity just to erase it. And I think that I love that idea. But even I'll expand upon that. I think what you said was, the user, and a lot of people may say, man, that's a lot of work for an individual user, but maybe they can do it by job type, right?
Yeah.
Accounting, for instance, as a group. Like, let's just protect the accounting and the CEO and the executive level, right? It doesn't have to be the entire organization, obviously, but to your point, and I like where you're going there, because that's an enablement component. That's a product. That's a key benefit of creating a strategy around business success. I love that, because so many people miss that. It's like, we're already going to replace the hardware. We're already going to implement a SaaS solution. Why don't we just implement security best practice at the same time?
Yep.
Why make so many changes to just make changes? Why don't you just make all the changes at once, communicate all the changes and the benefits, and deliver? So I like where you're going with that, because I agree 100%. One of the things, that does too is empower the MSP to create a new model of solutions. What are you seeing from your side in regards to this new value chain and solutions and services that can be created?
Yeah, what's interesting, when we talk to our top partners around the world, some of the world's leading MSPs, and this might sound weird, they don't sell managed services.
Right.
Managed
I think I,
services.
I thought
Yeah,
you were gonna. I was wondering if you were gonna say that, because
yeah, I
that.
am going to go there. And because I'm a pretty big proponent of this, they're a cloud company, they're a security company, they're a data management protection company. Look, if you're doing data backup, you're touching every device, because data touches every device. If you're doing security, you're touching every device. If you're doing cloud, you're pretty much touching every device. And when we talk managed services, those just ride the coattails.
Right.
You're going to have to monitor, you're going to have to manage, you're going to have to do your maintenance, your patching, and so forth. But your lead-in is a different value proposition. So when we look at those top service providers, you rarely see, or it's buried on back-end web pages, that they're a managed service provider, because they're driving a business need. We have, and COVID changed this a lot too, but it started just before COVID as well. Much more educated buyers. Business owners
Yes.
are reading. They see the risk. I heard 2 years ago all the time, oh, they're small, they'll never get hacked. Well, then they learned about leapfrog attacks and went, oh,
Yeah.
you know what? I could be the catalyst to a major chain getting breached, because I do work with them. And business owners suddenly changed their mindset and said, you know what? I think I do need to make an investment and I need some help. So when we have that diametric change in the marketplace, where we get an educated buyer, and they know what it is that they want, we can get very technical in the way that we offer our services.
100%.
Managed services, it's just kind of this generic term again, almost like security. I mean, when you really think about it, what does it mean? There's a food service company in Canada, and their tagline is your managed services company, but they're a food service company. So that
Yeah.
might say something to you as well, too.
Just say.
Yeah.
I love where you're going with that, and I've often said this is identify what your uniqueness is. What is it that you do as a company, and illustrate you are the product. Your process is your program. Your outcomes are the customer success metrics that are going to win you the customer or win you the deal at the deal table. And it's interesting to see those that adopt that mechanic in regards to that approach win more, right? Because I'm now appealing to the needs of the customer. And I have this whole exercise called customers' needs, wants, and fears, and understanding that whole component. And it's important that we do that, because as you dive into what it is and who do I address and everything that you said, like, does my contract support it? It's like, who am I, right? It's that inflection point in saying, who am I going to be as a technology solution provider? You don't have to call yourself a managed services provider. And to your point, there's so much evolution that's gone on here, and so I'm really excited to hear that you said that, because I'm excited that the industry is changing and morphing to the customer, and then those new models. And so you talk about something earlier, and you said it, and I don't know if anyone caught it. But before I get into it, I'm really excited. I want to ask this question because it's been burning since you said it. But let's ask one more question. I want to ask you this before we go there.
Okay.
We have a trivia question, and that trivia question is a little bit of a trick today. But two people are going to win some free tickets. So, what is our trivia question, Dave?
It is, what is the national sport of Canada? But again, it's a trick question. I'll give another hint. There might be two answers.
Yeah. For those of you that are playing along, I love the fact that he did that, because when he said it the first time, the immediate response that I had, he's like, "That's not actually correct," and I'm
Yeah.
like, "Oh, whoa, what?" So for me, it was fun to find out. So put your answers in the chat for those of you that are joining us along today. Thank you for being here with us. This has been a great chat so far. Hopefully, you're getting a lot of value to this. But one of the questions that's been burning, you just said it a minute ago, Dave, was SaaS Brawl. And when you said it, I was like, let's talk about that. What does SaaS Brawl mean to you? And what are you seeing?
Yeah, and you know what? It's interesting with SaaS Brawl. SaaS Brawl comes a lot down to managing the services, the amount of services, and the cost behind the services. And quickly that can get out of hand in that you bring in temporary workers, they get added to 365, they leave, we never deprecate the tenant. Orphaned resources in the cloud when we talk about VMs, things along those lines. It's a huge focus for us actually in that we've heard about SaaS Sprawl and we've heard about, the insight, and it's difficult to really see where do my costs sit, where am I over provisioned, where am I under provisioned, and that's not easy. And when you look at some of the platforms that are out there from some of the major players and major cloud service providers, there may not even be multi-tenancy. So you're individually checking each one. It's an area that we've started to invest in here to enable to bring out more cloud management services where we're rolling everything into one dashboard, one view, so that you have the ability to see those costs around Azure or your M365 or your user management. But SaaS Sprawl is very real, and it's easy, especially in some cases where we see service providers working with what we call co-managed or internal IT. There could be capabilities of users to add services themselves.
Right.
And in those cases, we don't have insight when it happened, but it's on the bill. It may have been needed temporarily, never got shut off, never got changed, never got, deprecated. And so as a result of that, the cost can get wildly out of control pretty quickly.
Oh, yeah.
And SaaS Sprawl makes it very difficult to monitor and manage an environment if you don't see all of the points, because even though it's SaaS, even though it has security from the cloud provider, you need to add your own layer of security as well too, and risk mitigation. So if you're not aware of it and we're not protecting it and we're not budgeting for it and we're not billing for it, you're decreasing your profitability constantly in your contracts. So SaaS Sprawl is a real problem. And we saw a ton of it through COVID. We're still seeing it. And so that's part of the reason that, these management dashboards you're hearing about, we're one of the ones doing it, are building these out because service providers need that insight moving forward.
I like what you're doing there. And I'm going to be honest with you. I think that what you're addressing is a big challenge in the MSP world, if you will, or in the technology solution provider world, because it shook the ground when SaaS started to take off. It drew the line between per device and per user, right? And it's like, oh my God, how do I get my head wrapped around what do I need to be doing here? I have a device, but I might have now in this new world so many more users than I have devices that I manage, right? And so what am I doing with this remote worker, and what am I selling to them? Like, it just spun everyone out of control. And to your point, we just started adding, and it didn't really get a control around what we were buying, billing, or even, it was just like, okay, help desk was adding a user, but contracts didn't know nothing about it. So like, you're right, it decreased productivity, and like you all of a sudden go back and look at your customer profitability, and you're like, we are way out of line, right? So SaaS Brawl is a huge thing. I'm curious, as you say that, you guys are really doing that. Can you talk to us more about what you're doing there and kind of how you're empowering the partner? Obviously, there's a lot more insights going on there, but now you piqued my interest in a number of ways because it's changed. We've got to think through this per user per device thing. It's still a big challenge. How are we solving? What are you guys doing to solve?
Yeah, so there's a couple different things actually that we're doing. So one is we actually just started debate on it. It's a solution called Cloud User Hub, and what that allows you to do is manage your 365 licensing. Allows you to manage the users behind the 365 licensing. But with that, it gives the capability for you to actually upgrade and downgrade your license counts right within the portal that we're building. So we'll do it through CSP, through other distributors, and so forth. That's one area, because what we heard from our partners was it's difficult through the platforms I have today from the people I buy from, or, if I'm doing it through, one of the major players, because I have to go individually by tenant. So we're trying to drive that efficiency with multi-tenancy and a global view. The second area that we're working on that'll be out later this year is actually a cloud asset management solution. And what that'll do is phase one will be Azure, and it's going to allow you to see all of your infrastructure as a service within Azure. You're going to be able to see everything that you have spun up. Orphan devices will actually give you all of your costing in both of those platforms as well, too, on a rolling basis, so you can see it. And it's going to allow you to reallocate resources, get rid of orphan devices, and so forth. So again, it's kind of that global view that people are struggling with today. And this was really a strategy change for us when our partners came to us and said, we need something to help resolve this. And so we pivoted the roadmap a bit to jump on this. And it's, I'm giving a little bit of a sneak peek here, but the Cloud User Hub actually just went into beta, and we just actually were showing it out on the road with our partners and with some prospects. And they were actually quite impressed, and quite a few have jumped onto the beta now as we're just bringing people onto it. And they're finding that, they finally get that one view that they've been looking for, and the ability to see their costing attached to it.
We've been asking for a single pane of glass for a really long time, David. If you have the magic wand, man, I am excited to see it. Let me tell you what. That's pretty exciting.
We'll show it at the event maybe, so everybody can see it.
That would be awesome. See now, everyone come Build It Live 2022, July 27th through 29th. David said we're going to get a good look at it there, so I'm going to hold you to it, man.
Yeah, we'll do it. Not a problem at all. We'll be happy to show both, actually.
Man, I am so excited. You guys got a lot of great announcements obviously coming out, and it sounds like it's going to be right in line with the event. One of the things that we're excited is that you guys are coming to Build It Live. You're going to be talking live. You're going to be obviously a lot of MSPs probably just on this webinar alone have already got a lot of value out of it. And, obviously we're going to have you come in there too. What are you guys talking about when you come visit? Can you share any?
Yeah, you know what? I'm going to be expanding a little bit on this, but a little bit more driven around the direct opportunities and how you identify them. And this concept of cloud and the evolvement of cloud moving forward and where we kind of see it going. So I'm not going to give too much away, Juan.
No, all right. You've already given it.
I think it'll be an interesting but also a fun discussion because I've seen a lot of the pitfalls and heard a lot of the pitfalls. So we'll discuss a lot of those as well, too.
Yeah, I love it. You already given us a bunch on this webinar alone, and I think that there's been tons of valuable nuggets for MSPs. I am curious though, obviously, cloud pivoting, we're looking at new models. You're giving us some valuable insights. One of the things is, access anywhere, anytime, any device. You mentioned that before. What does that mean to you? And kind of what are you guys doing to empower that?
Yeah, you know what? We actually think it is the right move. Giving access at different points. And I think it goes actually a little bit back to what you said, Juan, that confusion around per device, per user. We need to stop thinking device and start thinking services. Users are going to have a multitude of devices. You're going to have to manage them. And listen, I mean, it's the expectation today. I can't live without my 3 or 4 devices on the road, but you know what? They're managed by the IT team. It's just the way that it works. So when you think about that, any device, anywhere, anytime, you're allowing a user to complete their job when they need to and when it's required from anywhere. And so working from home changed things. When you look at that hybrid worker, 100%. Listen, they've got families. Kids get busy. Something happened. Johnny fell over and hit his knee, and Susie's crying. And you know what? They had to leave for a bit. But that doesn't mean that they weren't working at 6 and 7 o'clock at night. The cloud has enabled a lot of that where you don't have to physically be in the office. And so this idea of having connectivity from anywhere, as much as there's a risk point that you can fill those holes and you can build your programs around it, it brings productivity gains. It brings the opportunity for a business to be a global player. And a lot of businesses today, even if they're small and medium-sized enterprises, want to go global. We're a global economy now, and we all have to act like that. And we have to have the ability to manage and connect like a global economy.
I agree 110%. And I think that empowering your business, empowering other business owners to, be able to expand their reach. Obviously, again, we talk about the hiring challenges and being able to acquire new talent in multitudes of different ways, not necessarily focusing on that device-based perspective, but on the user-based perspective or service-based perspective is interesting to think about. And that is a new model, right? Those are three clearly different models. And that's where I love the evolution of the channel and and managed services and the opportunities that they have in front of them. Because I said it during the pandemic, now's your opportunity to rebuild yourself. Everyone's going to understand if you pivot or you change something or you change your pricing, you change your model, your mantra, you change your mission, whatever you change, everyone's going to understand as long as it's fitting with whoever it is you're having a conversation with, right? And illustrate the components, why you made the change, the reason that you did it. Business owners are trying to figure out how to stay open, right? And if you can help share some stories around why you pivoted from, a device-based model to a user-based model or a service-based model or an application-based model, they're going to understand. And so I love where you're going with that, because I think that it's really empowering to hear others are doing that and that you guys are embracing it and supporting us in the channel as well that way. So, one of the big things you talked about, that single pane of glass, and it's stuck in my head, right? We've been thinking about this thing forever, like this magic thing that we can't seem to get to, this nexus. Obviously insights are key, right? Businesses want to see how their businesses are performing. Managed services want to know that they're billing for the things that they have, that their customers are subscribing to. What are some of the things, your thoughts around some of the insights and things that you guys are delivering that are empowering MSPs?
Yeah, you know what? The cloud gives you a ton of analytics. And so where it's you're kind of playing into this a little bit, Juan, but I appreciate it. But we're actually delivering an analytics platform. We're coming out with one it's based on the back end around BI. But the reason that we're doing that is data is gold, and we all know that. But cloud opened this opportunity to see all these new analytics, to see how users interact with technology, to see throughput, to see their productivity, their efficiency, to allow us to drive a ton of automation that we want to. All of that, when you look at that data and that analytics, one of the big things I'm saying to service providers around the world, those are sales opportunities.
100%.
You need to go identify and dig into your data. And I ask a lot of service providers today, do you have a data analytics person on staff? If not, start thinking about it, because they'll feed your salespeople. We do it here as a business. We look into our data on a regular basis and see trends, and we see changes in the marketplace that allow us to pivot and make moves, bring in new OEMs, bring in new solutions, similar to like we talked about with the cloud stuff. But all of that insight in the cloud, you can take that, and if you massage it the right way, you will drive new opportunity. You will drive new revenue in your business. Look, we all think new customer acquisition, hey, it's important. But if a customer's spending $1 with you today on contract, they probably have $5 or $10 more that they can spend with you. And that analytics will find that business for you.
I love where you're going with that. I cannot wait to see that, because it's so important. I don't think a lot of people stop to smell the roses or do a customer profitability analysis. Where am I making my money with this customer? Are they high complexity, low profit, or are they high profit, low complexity? Like, even just understanding those two is big, right? But charting that path and really understanding those is key to real, true, ideal client profile. Who am I and what I do fits this kind of customer. So love how you're steering toward that.
Yeah, it's you know what? It's your point about customer profitability analysis. I think that's a big area that you've brought it up a few times now, Juan. It's critical. Our recommendation is you do that on a quarterly basis with all of your customer contracts. If they're not profitable, you have to make a price change, or you have to change how you're doing things with them. it's okay to raise prices. And I'm going to say that again. It's okay to raise prices.
I agree.
I talk to so many service providers where I say, well, what's your annual price increase in your contract? Oh, my customer would never accept that. Oh, that's interesting because everybody else they're buying from is doing it to them. So they will.
Yeah.
An inflationary price increase each year is not unheard of.
Right.
And when you do that, you help maintain your profitability because look at, as you know, Juan, you've done it. There's no perfect contract. There is no perfect service delivery where you never missed anything. And listen, engineers help out when they're on site just because they're there, and that never gets into a ticket. So, looking at it that way, your profitability reviews are critical. Then you overlay your analytics and your data and find new opportunity to upsell, cross-sell.
Yeah, we are definitely cut from the same cloth. Let's just put it that way. I mean, I actually coined the phrase as a profit protection program, right? I built a profit protection program around my product so that I didn't have erosion at all. Like I wasn't willing to negotiate. And
Yeah.
here are the frameworks around why I'm not willing to negotiate. I'm in business to stay in business, right? That's how I used to communicate it. I'm not going to change my price.
Yeah.
It's just not going to happen.
And don't be scared of being profitable. It's okay. Like,
I know.
the person you're selling to, they're trying to make money too. Everybody has to make money. So, sales can come across as a bad thing, but listen, it's how you sell. And, everybody's heard the old adage, right? Everybody wants to buy. They don't want to be sold to. It's relationship. Build the relationship. People will buy from you.
Yep. One of the things I will say too is I say this often, and I actually was writing something the other day. It's called, I thought it was kind of funny because it's, many MSPs when we first start off are in practice, and then we build a practice, and then we evolve to best practice, right?
Yep.
And it's interesting how long we can stay in practice if we don't actually make those calls to create a practice, right? And so to your point, 100%. You'd be shocked at how many customers would be okay with you actually raising your price. I hear that all the time. It's very interesting that we do get that a lot. So, one of the things is obviously you mentioned this a couple of times with SaaS and with the cloud. What are some of the key advantages? Obviously, storage is a big conversation in the modern era, and in egress and ingress and all these expenses. We hear a lot of the expense, but what are some of the benefits, Dave? And how do you kind of talk past some of those challenges?
Yeah. You know what? I think a lot of people still have the mindset that there's this big cost to data storage. And there used to be. I mean, I remember the early days when we were selling in South Africa, and it was $1.50 a gig, USD. And you're like, holy geez, what are we going to do here? How am I ever going to sell a backup product down here? And in just a few years, that's changed dramatically. Look, storage is a commodity. We all get it. It's just something that we pay for. But the difference with the cloud is it gives us unlimited storage. And what I mean by unlimited storage is retention points, archiving, and so forth. More and more with compliance and regulation today, there's a need for long-term storage. There's a need to allow that storage to continue to grow, right? And it's an important one because as you do more archives and more retention points, the more your data sets grow. Well, that used to be cost prohibitive. It's not anymore. But also to meet regulatory requirements, we have to do it. I was talking to a partner in the UK and they deal with a particular industry and they have a requirement now to hold the data for 15 years. That's a long time. And that's a lot of data. But their worry wasn't the cost of the data and the storage for 15 years, because again, as I mentioned, it's somewhat of a commodity today. They said, hey, what is the accessibility going back 15 years?
Wow.
And that was really the big question was, if I need to do that for an audit or a legal reason, how quickly can I get to it? So anyways, we were showing them with our tech and our backup stuff, but that's more of the question. But the cloud gives us that really to store years and years and years and years and years of data and make it very easy to go grab it. And that's the simplicity that comes with the cloud. But as well, that scalability is huge because look at data grew 3 times during COVID on average. That's huge. And, when we talk about the number of zettabytes, and that is a real term because I've got it in a presentation somewhere that they anticipate by 2025, you wouldn't believe it. And I don't even really know what a zettabyte. I think it's 100,000 petabytes or something. But 3 times growth is massive in a period of time of about 2 years. And so the cloud opened that door for us and allowed us to not have that concern anymore and this massive cost that's attached to it.
Wow. It's interesting to hear so many companies, and there's a lot of companies that are out there. There's a reason why people want to keep their on-prem services. So like they feel like they have control of the data, right? And to your point, you mentioned earlier, data is the new gold. And obviously, if you guys want to harvest and you want to tap into the new gold rush, it's give them what they're looking for, right?
Yep.
Is provide them with unlimited storage and the ability to do that. I think that, obviously, anytime anybody that's here, I can think back to the days of I can't even count how many drives I've lost over the period of my lifetime where for the longest time I held on to them in hopes that one day I would send them to data forensic company and then recover the data, but it was just pictures and stuff. Even those for me were a big thing, right? And for a business, it's critical, right? And so not having that, opportunity to lose your data and that you can actually have your data kept forever unless you're in a compliance world, because I know there's gonna be people out there that say, look, Juan, people don't want to keep their data forever, but there are companies that do, right? And then those people are the ones that are harvesting the new data. So we got a couple of people that in the chat here talking about some of the guesses on our trivia question today. One of them says curling's got to be the national sport, or we got another one that says hockey might be the other one. So we got some interaction here from our chat today. So we're not going to tell you just yet who it is. We're not going to say the answer just yet. I got one more thing. Obviously, I like to talk about what's next all the time, Dave. Like that's one of the big things. I'm always trying to look around the corner, and obviously we have unique insights. Obviously, we talk to a lot of people. And I think that as we think about where we're going next and what we're doing next, obviously we recognize cloud as like mainstay, as table stakes. It's becoming more, commonplace, and we really need to push it more. It's becoming the value chain, right? But does it decentralize? Does it remain public? Does it go hybrid? What do you think? What are your thoughts on that?
Yes.
Yes, right.
Yeah. Listen, we're always going to have mainstream services, right, that are going to run out of the public cloud. They're going to be there. I mean, listen, if somebody here has figured out a way to compete against 365, let me know. I'd happily invest in your business. I think they kind of own the world. What I think what we are going to see one is as security continues to advance, look at those threat actors are getting smarter and they're getting better. And we're seeing more lockdown. We see it with Cyber Essentials in the UK. We see it with Poppy in South Africa, and we see it with different regulations in North America, like HIPAA and the Privacy Act in Canada. There's more and more of a requirement to lock down that data and to ensure that there's protection around it. As a result of that, public cloud may not always be the answer in shared services. So that's where I think you're going to see the decentralization. Now, when you talk decentralization, it scares some people. They go, well, that's a whole new investment. Really, it's on-prem in the cloud. That's what we're talking. It's not this crazy model that you haven't done before. The difference is you're locking down and giving them a dedicated cloud instance. And we're seeing more and more of that with organizations and with our partners offering that. So that's why I say yes to the answer, because there's going to be public, there's going to be private, and there's going to be hybrid. They're all going to have to talk to each other. And they're all going to have layers of security. When I mention all of those are all new opportunities of revenue stream for all service providers, because again, technology advances, our customers need to advance with it. And as service providers, it's our job to recommend the best options to our customers. So to me, I see all three moving forward, but I think you're going to see a shift to decentralized in businesses that are more risk adverse. And I think that's where a big opportunity is going to sit.
I 100% agree with you. One of the things that I used to use as leverage was, look, I used to have to help customers move past their fear of the cloud, right? And we would inject it as a backup capability and say, look, we're going to save your, here's all the reasons why, here are all the compliances that we're going to check the boxes by having this solution implemented. And as they got more customary to that and they were acceptant of it, then it was a gateway. And it was like, okay, well, let's move one of your servers to the cloud because this one's going to expire. Right. And let's move some of this data to the cloud, and let's just move a little bit more of this to the cloud. And the more they got more comfortable with it, the better they felt about it. But, there was just like this weird aura around the cloud that, since I don't have it control and I can't hear the fan spinning in the server room, that it's not mine anymore. Right. And so it's like, it's still yours. And that's where I think we've got to be careful too, is not owning a customer's data 100%. That was one of the things too. They were like, well, I don't want you to have my data.
Yeah.
So, being careful and cognizant around that.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned they don't hear the fan in the server room. We did
Yeah.
a small campaign with a service provider years ago when he was looking to move his customers to the cloud, and we called it "Have Lunch and Hug Your Server Day." And he brought them to the data center, and he actually had lunch with them right in front of the rack with their server. And he said, "Well, that one's yours." And he said, "So it's still a real thing. It's just it's not in your office anymore." And it was kind of a funny joke thing where he got people in to see the data center and the real security, and it worked well for him. Actually, he moved almost all of his customers to the
I
cloud.
love the fact that you had a lunch and hug your server day. That is awesome. That's got to be the best thing I've heard yet. For those of you who are hosting servers in a data center, have a lunch and hug your server day.
Yeah,
That's wonderful.
comfort
So,
level.
yeah, well, it's a little feel good, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
one of the great things about you guys is that you guys have been really doing a lot to give back to the community. And one of the things I wanted to talk about a little bit as we're kind of circling up the horses here before making our announcement on our lucky winners today is you guys have something called the Head Nerds team that's open to the entire world. Like you don't even have to be a partner to get a part of it. Can you talk us through what the Head Nerds are? Because for me as a business owner, like I'm always looking for, meaningful ways to get advice or education or think about things or get some help. One of the challenges that when I first started mine is that there wasn't a lot of that, right? That's why I give back to the community because I wish that would have been there for me. But what are you guys doing at Head Nerds?
Yeah, it's actually really fun. So we started building out the Head Nerds team about 3.5 years ago, and these are industry experts that we've hired in. And as you mentioned, this is open to the world. They run regular trainings, boot camps, and something called office hours. Office hours are call in and ask whatever questions you want. Our nerds encompass Mac management. They encompass sales and marketing. They encompass security. They encompass business optimization, automation, PowerShell, you name it. We do not scrub leads off of these. We do not send these to marketing or to sales. This is absolutely 100% to give back to the community. Why? As a vendor in this space, if MSPs aren't growing, we're not growing.
Yeah.
And so we just want to help MSPs grow their business and drive more efficiency. And these folks are amazing. Mark Andre on our side runs the group. And you can jump in and see Stephanie Hammond talk about, hey, what do I do after I generated the lead to run a proper initial meeting? Or Lewis Pope talking about how you structure your security services around a regulatory act. They do all of this to the wider market. So please feel free to, jump in, join their sessions, check them out. Again, I'm being upfront. This is not a lead generation thing. They are there for the betterment of the community. It's a huge part of what we do as an organization. We believe community is massive. So if you're not even a customer of Enable, you don't own anything, who cares? Go to the link that was just popped up. Go check out when some of their events are. Send your engineers and listen, at best, they to network with a bunch of their peers on those calls and hear what other people are asking and doing, and you'll garner new ideas. I guarantee it.
Yeah, that's just really great. I think the link is in there. A couple people are obviously popping it in there. It's really great. I just wish that I remember back in my day, I had to lean on my own understanding to try to pull that through. I mean, I was remember implementing servers, running into challenges, implementing new infrastructures, and you had to lean on vendors for that advice. So I really, 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 really appreciate that you guys are doing that and say thank you for that because just as a spokesperson for the entire MSP community, I want to say thank you because that's huge for business owners. So I would have loved that. I don't want
Yeah.
to go call and ask a question right now because I'm sure there's a PowerShell script that I can think of that I don't know the answer to.
They are good. Trust me, they're much smarter than I am. So take me with a grain of salt on this today and then go see what they do because it's a whole nother level.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, with that being said, man, I want to tie the knot here on this awesome webinar. There's been so much value dropped on this webinar alone that I can't wait to take some of this content and republish it because it's been amazing, Dave. You've been
Awesome.
spectacular, and thank you for joining us. But without further ado, we have our trivia question of the day what was our trivia question, Dave?
It was, what is the national sport of Canada, which was a trick question.
What's the answer, man?
It's actually, in summer, it is lacrosse, and in winter, it's hockey. So now, if you even ask most Canadians, I'll be upfront, they would say it's hockey, but it's actually two.
I'll be darned. Yeah, when you got me on that one because I was thinking it was something else. But we got two lucky winners today, and those two lucky winners are, do you see the names in the chat,
I
Dave?
do. Yeah, it's
You
Lisa
want
Compton and Matt Wren. So congratulations. That's awesome.
All right, Lisa Compton and Matt Rand, congratulations. You guys are coming to Build It Live 2022 as a VIP, and we want to say thank you for joining us. You know, Dave, this was an amazing webinar. I'm going to be honest with you. We're going to have to like get off and go talk about a couple of these other points because me and you are like two peas in a pod on this.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I can't wait to have you at Build It Live 2022, man. This is going to be an amazing conversation. You guys brought so much value in the webinar. I can't even fathom what you guys are going to do in live. So I'm looking forward to having you. For those of you that are coming to join us that didn't win the tickets today, make sure you go to buildit-live.net. And if I do that again today, I'm going to freak out. Make sure you're using today's code from Enable, which is going to be Own the Cloud. And again, an amazing webinar, Dave. Thank you so much for such valuable insights. This has been an honor, man. And it's really great to talk to great people. And thanks for all that you're doing for the community and giving back, man. It's been special.
No, hey, listen, I appreciate being here. I love the chat. It was unreal, and I look forward to continuing it.
Awesome. For everyone that's joined us, thank you for being here. We'll see you next week on another Build It Live trailer where we'll have another special guest. And we look forward to seeing you live. Build It Live 2022, July 27th through 29th. Thanks, everybody, and have a wonderful day. And thanks again, Dave.
Thanks all.